Hip-hop and fashion have been intrinsically linked since the genre's inception. Rappers put that shit on, and people want to be just like them. From a more general perspective, we have cases like 90s hip-hop fashion, which is still influencing streetwear in 2024 with baggy silhouettes and footwear trends such as Timbs and Wallabies. And then there are more localized examples like Atlanta. The rappers from that city really have the local population thinking this is the pinnacle of fashion. Someone really needs to do a study to see if this has led to a local decrease in male fertility. You lot need to let them balls breathe. Hip-hop's influence on fashion as a whole is so broad that I wouldn't realistically be able to make a video covering the subject without upsetting some insufferable fans because I didn't include their favourite subgenres or artists. So for that reason, I have decided to focus on individual rappers who have had a considerable influence on the landscape of fashion in some way. For clarity, this will not include examples of rappers who have worn an unusual or polarizing fit that gets a lot of attention but doesn't result in people trying to emulate it. For example, as disappointing as it is, Young Thug fans did not start stepping out in dresses after the release of the Jeffrey mixtape in 2016. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get started. Rakim Mayers, or A$AP Rocky as he's more commonly known, is a rapper hailing from the New York neighborhood of Harlem. He rose to fame in 2011 and stood out within the genre due to his sense of style and for publicly voicing his love for the art form of fashion. His style influence even started way back with his first music video, which was for the song Purple Swag. He and other members of A$AP Mob can be seen in the video wearing a streetwear brand called Black Scale. Purple Swag got a lot of mainstream attention during the summer of 2011 and pretty much kick-started his career, and not long after this, Rocky decided to head down to the Black Scale store where he so happened to bump into one of the co-founders, Alfred Tategel. According to him, the Purple Swag video had gotten the brand lots of attention, which had resulted in an influx of customers, and as a result, he decided to supply Rocky and the rest of A$AP Mob with free clothes to push the label further, and a year later would even do a collaborative capsule with the rapper. It's impressive that after just a single music video release, A$AP Rocky was already influencing what people were wearing on the streets due to how he propped up Black Scale and made it look cool. Later on in his career, he would also do the same thing for the brand Hood by Air, which he started to be seen wearing from around 2013. He became viewed as the unofficial face of the brand and even walked in their autumn-winter 2013-14 runway show. However, in his 2014 song, Multiply, he would unexpectedly diss Hood by Air and as a result, severed his strong ties to the brand. In an interview with The Cut magazine that was published around a month after the release of the song, Rocky justified his dissing of the brand by saying, "I birthed it so I can kill it," which he didn't elaborate on until a 2019 interview with Kerwin Frost where he explained that at the time he felt like he was entitled to some ownership of the brand due to his part and influence in making it popular. Although Hood by Air did kind of fall off in the years following, I think it's a bit of a stretch to claim that A$AP Rocky was solely responsible for this, as there were other factors at play and things going on behind the scenes with the brand at the time. Essentially, this situation illustrates how obnoxious Rocky was when it came to his influence on fashion, but to be honest, he's sort of always been like that. In 2012, after only being in the public eye for around a year, he said, quote, "I'm going to be a fashion icon in a minute," because he was mixing streetwear with high fashion, which he claimed had never been seen before. While I don't think that claim is completely true, he was one of the first celebrities to really pioneer the convergence of high fashion and streetwear, and ultimately that is what his legacy as a style icon boils down to. I think in the present year of 2024, it's quite easy to forget that high fashion and streetwear used to be like oil and water, and it wasn't until Virgil Abloh paved the way with the concept of luxury streetwear with Off-White and then his work at Louis Vuitton that it became an industry norm. In the same song that Rocky dissed Hood by Air, he also dissed another brand by the name of Bin Trill. This label started as a DJ collective made up of some pretty low-key names like Florencia Galarza, a model and footballer, a mysterious person who goes by the acronym YWP, this guy called Heron Preston, he went on to make some more clothes I think, Matthew Williams, he also made some more clothes I'm pretty sure, Justin Saunders, who went on to make some shoes, oh and a mechanical keyboard, which I assume he made to replace his last one that had a dodgy J key, and finally, surprise surprise, Mr. Virgil Abloh himself. Oh, and apparently that YWP bloke was supposedly, apparently, allegedly, actually a man you might know as Mr. West, with YWP standing for Yeezy World Peace. So yeah, a bunch of very low-key people. But anyway, Bin Trill was meant to represent this DJ collective, but when they started releasing t-shirts, people would view and treat it as a legitimate fashion label. It's almost like these low-key members were actually very well connected and got a lot of high-profile people to wear the t-shirts, and as a result, drum up a lot of hype for the brand. One of these high-profile individuals was A$AP Rocky, and he wore this brand a lot up until the release of the song Multiply, where he said, "I ain't really fucking with that Bin Trill." While the diss for Hood by Air, which appeared on the same song, was definitely serious, the one for Bin Trill seems to be more of a form of tough love for his friend Virgil. Ultimately, after the hype died down, nothing was really made of the brand, and it ended up being sold to the high street fast fashion label PacSun. With fashion being integral to Rocky's image, I think he just didn't really want to be associated with a brand that sold out and no longer had any substance behind it. Regardless, it's well known that A$AP Rocky and Virgil have been friends since before Rocky was even a celebrity. When Virgil started a brand called Pyrex Vision, Rocky wore it and helped popularize it. In 2013, Virgil unfortunately received a cease and desist from the company Pyrex. Here's Rocky's very humble account of this whole situation. "I think the beaker company Pyrex was coming for that arse, so he had to do the wise thing. He consulted with us and was asking some opinions. Subsequently, everybody is walking around in off-white." Virgil had claimed that the Pyrex Vision brand ended because it was meant to be an artistic experiment and wasn't intended to become a commercial enterprise, but I don't know, seeing as we have Rocky's account of the legal side of this situation, this seems like more of an excuse. Also, starting a brand by buying a bunch of discounted Ralph Lauren flannel shirts, putting a basic print on them and then selling them for a 700% markup seems like more of a commercial move than an artistic experiment. But anyway, essentially what I'm trying to say is A$AP Rocky was a key player in the convergence of streetwear and luxury fashion and was pretty much around Virgil at every step that he took to pave the way for a new era that revolutionized the fashion industry. The final subject I wanted to cover regarding A$AP Rocky's influence is a genre of fashion he was accredited to making cool in the early 2010s called street goth. This aesthetic was characterized by Rocky's classic move of mixing streetwear and high fashion, but specifically to convey a darker and gothic style, with Rick Owens being one of the main clothing labels utilized in this style. What does that description remind you of? Okay, I'm not trying to say Rocky invented the Opium aesthetic, because there are some very clear distinctions between that style and street goth. Regardless, it is interesting to see that in many ways what Rocky was wearing over a decade ago could definitely be described as proto-Opium. But anyway, I've had enough of stroking this guy's already overly inflated ego, so let's move on to discussing his boyfriend. Supreme 5 panels, colourful print shirts, shorts, high socks and Vans. This was the uniform that Tyler the Creator popularised alongside members of his group Odd Future during the early 2010s. This group was located in LA, with many of the members being skaters, which unsurprisingly informed the fashion of the crew. For a lot of people, especially teenagers, this was an entry point into fashion and definitely contributed to the rise of streetwear in the 2010s. This era of Tyler the Creator and Odd Future was how so many people were introduced to Supreme, which we all know spearheaded the hypebeast style craze that came later on in the decade. Hip-hop is a genre known for boasting about lifestyles that are out of reach for most of the audience. This means that people who choose to identify, act or dress like these rappers would often come across as ingenuine or cringe, especially if you're a young person. This was not the case with Odd Future, seeing as the group were literally just a bunch of kids having fun, rapping, making beats and skateboarding. This was a far more relatable lifestyle to the fans, and I think in part really contributed to the Odd Future fashion aesthetic becoming so popular amongst younger people. Ultimately, it was a very fun and accessible style. The clothes were affordable and a lot of the fans already owned some of the pieces, such as Vans, colourful shirts or long socks, and all they had to do to complete the look was buy a Supreme 5 panel with mummy's credit card. At the time, Tyler had very childish design sensibilities and preferences, which was apparent in his style and subsequently in his influence on fashion. I don't mean this in a negative sense, I am just referring to things like the cartoony Odd Future donut logo which he originally came up with. This isn't a hot take by any means, it's just evident. Tyler's co-designer from Golfwang, Phil Toselli, has even publicly said that Tyler draws his designs like an 8-year-old. This immature aesthetic of hand-drawn cartoon-style graphics, bright clashing colours and other fun visual elements in general just further made the fashion style more appealing and relatable to younger audiences, as it didn't take itself too seriously. This childlike aesthetic was heavily juxtaposed by the ridiculously vulgar and controversial lyrics Tyler was coming out with at the time. I don't think suburban Karen would be very happy about buying her privately educated 14-year-old son Sebastian the colourful and funky donut hoodie for Christmas after hearing what Tyler had to say about pregnant women on Troncat. Ultimately, Tyler's vulgar lyrics were purely conceptual and meant for shock value, and in a way reflect his childish and almost immature aesthetic. He was very young at the time and likely saw being controversial as purely a means of gaining more attention as an artist, but probably didn't consider the consequences. However, this would later come back to bite him. When Tyler arrived in the UK in 2015, he was detained at customs and received a 3 to 5 year ban from entering the UK. This was imposed by this dumb Theresa May, who was the Home Secretary at the time and claimed that the lyrics from his 2009 mixtape Bastard and debut album Goblin would encourage terrorist acts. However, it's worth noting that this is not Theresa's first rodeo when it comes to being responsible for black people being wrongfully deported from the UK. Anyway, following Tyler's early career, his fashion and sense of style would heavily develop and mature. Essentially, he went from dressing like a colourful, immature skater boy to a suave and cultured grandpa. This change in his attire started to happen around the time he released his Grammy Award-winning album Eagle in 2019, but we are most definitely feeling the influence of Tyler's updated style in the current 2024 fashion zeitgeist. All the ex-hypebeast Tyler fanboys who used to spend most of their free time in queues outside Supreme now choose to spend their weekends hanging around the ALD coffee shop in London Soho before heading down the street to the Blue Posts pub, where they would performatively partake in some pints and chit-chat, all while desperately hoping one of those TikTok interviewers will appear and ask them to break down their fit, which would likely consist of GH Bass loafers, Our Legacy pleated trousers, a cardigan over a white tee, gold jewellery, vintage Gucci shades and a new Shankar hat. As expected, the TikTok hive mind has since come up with a number of brain rot buzzwordy names to denote this style, with the two most common ones being grandpacore or the eclectic grandpa look. This isn't even reserved to niche and chronically online corners of the internet. It's very mainstream, and lots of big publications have written articles about this style being present and popular in 2024. Tyler the Creator is considered to be the person who popularized this style trend. Another member of Odd Future I wanted to briefly touch on is Frank Ocean. While this man is mainly famous for his angelic singing, he does dabble in a bit of rapping here and there, and had the best verse on Oldie by far. Also, regular viewers of this channel will know I will take any opportunity to bring up this man purely as an excuse to use the sound effect. Anyway, this outfit he wore to a Louis Vuitton runway show in 2019 is iconic for being an early example of gorpcore, and we all know how popular that style trend became in the years following. For a lot of people, this was their first time seeing outdoor clothing being worn for style rather than purely just functionality, and it definitely helped catalyse the rise of gorp. Even when these pictures were initially posted online, this fit got a lot of attention, and as a result, those Arc'teryx grotto beanies sold out, and then people were trying to resell them for quadruple the retail price. He also owns the jewellery brand Homer, which has been extremely hyped and popular amongst chronically online fashion enjoyers since its commercial launch in 2021. However, I don't really count simply owning a brand as a rapper as meaningfully influencing fashion, as fans will always consume those products whether or not they truly like the style. Also, Frank wasn't even the person who pioneered selling extremely overpriced silver to quirky internet boys. Chief Keef is a highly respected rapper hailing from the south side of Chicago, and is not only famous for influencing a generation of rap artists, but also the wardrobes of suburban white boys. True Religion jeans, designer belts, and the iconic big logo Ralph Lauren polos are what made up the Sosa uniform, and for whatever reason, Caucasian teenagers from the suburbs ate that shit up. These fit pics were heavily shared around the internet in the form of memes, and while obviously Chief Keef's fashion influence reached more than just this demographic of people, it was the irony of preppy middle to upper class kids adopting the style that got the attention. This was considered extremely corny, and to some people almost offensive if you look at it from a perspective of appropriation. I am not going to dive into the nitty-gritty of cultural appropriation within the genre of rap, as I have absolutely zero authority or insight into the subject. However, I do want to mention that I believe the perception of the privileged Caucasian trap lifestyle fusion aesthetic, what the fuck did I even just say, has changed a lot since the mid-2010s. Around the time that these Sosa-inspired fit pics were being laughed at and memed online, the only way you could really have a successful career as a rapper while also openly being from a privileged Caucasian background would be if you caricatured yourself and made the corniness part of your self-branding in the way that Lil Dicky or Macklemore did. Nowadays, we have successful rappers like Cemetery, whose music and fashion are heavily inspired by Chief Keef, and to be honest, doesn't dress too dissimilar from the fellows in these pictures. He likes to rap about an extremely violent lifestyle, which would seem ironic given his privileged background. For context, his dad worked on the Pokemon movie soundtrack. However, he has publicly claimed his music is very, very serious. For example, one of his songs is called We Don't Dial 911. This song title becomes very ironic considering Cemetery called the police on a rapper who looks like Peter Griffin if he did opiates and wore Balenciaga. These two individuals were beefing online before this situation, with Cemetery claiming he would fight Joey on sight, but ultimately he avoided any interaction with him when they finally crossed paths. Funnily enough, this all went down at Chief Keef's album launch party. A more mainstream and far less insufferable example would be the rapper Ian. This guy is the pinnacle of privileged frat boy trap fusion, and he doesn't hide it. I mean, his From the Block performance video was shot in the middle of him having a family dinner in the garden of a very nice looking house. From a fashion perspective, Ian can mainly be seen wearing a white t-shirt, grey joggers and Maison Margiela Gats. These shoes have become increasingly popular over the past year, and while Ian is definitely not responsible for this, he is contributing to the hype, with many people buying into the trend because of him, and you've literally got people on Grailed referring to them as Ian Gats. Pharrell Williams is probably the one hip-hop artist that you can say is 100% objectively influencing fashion in 2024. This is simply because he is the current creative director for the menswear line at Louis Vuitton. However, as of yet, I don't think he has done anything that significant and is mainly just deciding what the luggage owned by Middle Eastern oil barons will look like in the years to come. The most recognizable design motif from Pharrell's tenure at the label is this pixelated camo pattern, which I think from a graphic design perspective is a cool take on the classic LV checkerboard pattern. However, I wouldn't say fashion consumers are exactly rushing to acquire this look, and yeah, loud all over print stuff isn't really in vogue at the moment, but it also kind of makes you look like a grassy dirt block from Minecraft. I do understand that Louis Vuitton isn't meant to be a trend-setting powerhouse and money is their main priority. However, Pharrell's collections at the brand have been just a bit underwhelming so far. In some cases, it feels like he's just reacting to existing mainstream trends rather than actually innovating. First, he made gentrified Timbs, and now he's done these football-related pieces, which to me feels like a corporate attempt to extend the hype for the whole bloke core football mania trend. Pharrell has absolutely no connection to the sport. If he had instead come out with a skate shoe, that would feel more true to what Pharrell is known for. Billionaire Boys Club had roots in skate culture, and this is where I feel like most of his fashion influence credentials lie, seeing as it was the first brand that laid the blueprint for the whole luxury streetwear thing. He also helped push the popularity of Bape in the West. From a personal style perspective, he's far more willing to experiment compared to other hip-hop artists, but I wouldn't say he's really a trendsetter on that front. His most notorious fit is this, and I don't think anybody was rushing to recreate it. Although it seems like I've shat on Pharrell a bit in this section, I do still have a lot of respect for him and his impact on fashion in general. I'm just not the biggest fan of his work at Louis Vuitton, and his personal style doesn't really resonate with me, but a lot of people would strongly disagree with me. He was one of the first hip-hop artists to subvert the norm and expectations of how rappers should dress. He created an environment where experimental fashion is more normalized within the hip-hop genre. If it wasn't for him, then maybe hip-hop would be a far less fashionable genre of music. It will come as no surprise that Lil Yachty is making this list, seeing as his personal style is pretty much the streetwear blueprint in 2024. He was named the best dressed rapper of 2023 by Complex, and there was even a TikTok trend where people would put together their best Lil Yachty inspired fits. The recent resurgence in the popularity of Timberlands has to be at least somewhat accredited to him. This picture was taken in early 2022, yet what he's wearing is pretty much the 2024 standardized TikTok streetwear uniform. He is also suspected of having influenced the personal style of Drake in recent times. There's a very clear change in the bagginess of Drake's clothes and the incorporation of more vintage pieces since he and Yachty out of nowhere became very close friends. When Playboy Carti first started to gain popularity in 2016, there wasn't really anything special about his personal style. He dressed in a hypebeast streetwear style that was very standard for that era of SoundCloud rap. He would often be seen wearing brands like Supreme and Palace, which he switched out for more higher end brands such as Raf Simons as we approached the late 2010s. However, the genesis of Carti's fashion influence came with the release of his second studio album, Whole Lotta Red. This marked a new era for Playboy Carti in both his sound as an artist and his personal style. This is when we saw the fashion style Opium start to emerge, which is named after Carti's record label. This is because not only Carti but also the signed artists Ken Carson, Destroy Lonely and Homicide Gang all adhere to this aesthetic. The Opium style can be described as dark and gothic with a preference for exaggerated proportions and silhouettes, with both ultra skinny and ultra baggy looks making appearances. There is also a focus on designer brands such as Rick Owens, Balenciaga, Vetements, Givenchy and Chrome Hearts, and you can pick out influences from rock, metal and punk subcultures. Essentially, this is the vibe that Opium seeks to convey. This genre of fashion became increasingly popular in the years following the release of Whole Lotta Red and was catalysed by the rise of Opium label artists Ken Carson and Destroy Lonely. Being a chronically online fashion trend, TikTok was of course one of the main breeding grounds for these sorts of outfits, which I think helped contribute to this trend having a mainly younger audience. If Drake starts dressing like this, we'll all know why. Now, you might be thinking, if one of the key components of Opium is outfits utilising crazy statement pieces from designer brands such as Rick Owens and Balenciaga, then how are these kids able to afford to partake in this trend? Some kids will obviously buy cheaper alternatives, but the main culprit is reps. Fake or replica clothing has become massively popular over the past few years, and the Opium trend has definitely contributed to this, but I would say it's mainly come about as a reaction to sneaker and reseller culture. This is definitely a hot and very debated subject and probably deserves an entire video. While I definitely advocate for directly supporting designers and brands pushing forward the fashion industry, I can also acknowledge that it's mainly kids who are buying these reps and then getting flamed by adults on the internet for it. Ultimately, these children wouldn't be buying full price Rick if they didn't have access to reps. I do acknowledge and agree with the unethical fashion side of the argument. Despite that, these rep factories are no different from fast fashion ones when it comes to worker conditions and environmental impact. And if these kids can't access reps, they'll just buy fast fashion alternatives, so what's the difference? Again, I want to make it clear that I am not saying I support reps, but I also think that with online debates around the subject, you're expected to pick a side and either fully support or condemn it, but I think the issue is a bit more nuanced than that. I personally see reps as fashion's version of torrenting. When I was a kid, I used to torrent cracked software, but now I'm an adult, so I pay for it. However, if I didn't have access to that cracked software, then I wouldn't have had the opportunity to acquire the passion and skills to create videos like the one you're currently watching. Subsequently, these software companies would now have one less customer, but more importantly, you guys would have one less YouTube video to watch while you're eating your dinner. Basically, if a kid buys a rep pair of sneakers because they can't afford the scumbag reseller prices for the authentic ones, which were likely also made in a sweatshop, then it's not that deep. However, if you're a fully grown adult constantly ordering these massive shipments of reps directly from China, then you're a dickhead. Anyway, tangent over, let's get back to talking about this bloke. Playboy Carti's influence on fashion over the past few years cannot be denied, but did his style change after Whole Lotta Red come out of nowhere, or has he been influenced by anyone? Well, it turns out that Carti has been accused of biting the style of Swedish rapper Echo 2K. The first example people like to point to is the dunce hat by Anonymous Club. For most people, this hat is synonymous with Carti as he wore it in the video for Evil Jordan. However, Echo was rocking this hat 2 years ago and blood didn't even take it off when he went swimming. This one example alone is a bit of a stretch because it's just a single hat, and you could also argue that Carti is actually referencing the ASAP Rocky street goth thing, seeing as Anonymous Club is owned by Shane Oliver, who also co-founded Hood by Air, which Carti also started wearing clothes from and even released a song named after. Although, I will say if you showed a Carti fan this image, they would immediately think it's their idol in the back, but it's actually Echo 2K next to his colleague Mr. Tyboy Goon. So I can see why it's debated that him wearing this hat could be seen as copied if it's worn within a very similar dark gothic style. However, for this next fit, Mr. Jordan Terrell Carter got caught red-handed. Bro copied the fit down to the Tom Ford boxers. There are some other more nitpicky examples of him supposedly biting Echo's swag, but ultimately I think it's just easier and more accurate to say that Carti has simply just been inspired by Echo 2K's style, and for all we know this could all just be down to a dodgy stylist on Carti's team. Anyway, since I've been talking about Echo 2K, let's move on to some other Swedish rappers. Jonathan Lindua, or Young Lean, is a rapper hailing from Stockholm who is credited as being one of the most influential figures within the cloud rap subgenre. Over the years, he has developed a very unique and eccentric personal style which I am personally a fan of, but I don't imagine many people are trying to replicate. I mean, in his recent Boiler Room set, he looks like if Dracula went to CSM. However, this has not always been the case. When Young Lean first blew up around 2013, he was known for wearing outfits such as this iconic combo of this polo sport anorak jacket and a bucket hat. Essentially, around this time, Young Lean as well as his associates from Sad Boys and Drain Gang could be seen wearing and rapping about brands such as Polo Sports, The North Face, Ralph Lauren and Nike. The music video for Kyoto illustrates this well. All these brands are extremely accessible, all of which you could pick up from an outlet store such as TK Maxx or TJ Maxx for my American viewers. This combined with a relatable image was a surefire way for these Swedish teenagers to influence the fashion of their similarly aged fans. It was a similar situation to how Tyler the Creator and Odd Future influenced fashion of younger people, just on a smaller scale. Young Lean even addressed this in a 2016 interview with Vogue where he talks about how he was aware of kids proudly trying to dress like him and how the style was apparently being referred to as post-chavcore. Maybe the impact on fashion that these Swedish rappers had isn't as big as I'm making it out to be, but I am 100% biased, seeing as their influence definitely affected me and my friends back in the day. This line from Blade's 2016 song Like a Virgin is what made 15-year-old me feel like skating in my outlet bought Ralph Lauren all over print pajamas was an acceptable style choice. I want to give extra props to Blade, seeing as this image of him wearing this jacket was how I was first introduced to Final Home, which was the brand that first got me interested into looking into and researching fashion rather than just mindlessly consuming it. My first YouTube video was also a deep dive into Final Home, and that basically started this channel, so if Blade hadn't put that shit on, then maybe you wouldn't be watching this video right now. Everyone please go comment "Thank you Bladey" below. Now I've mentioned every rapper who's influenced fashion. I can't think of any more hip hop artists
Hold on, we running out of time, so I guess I'm going, oh no.
If there's one rapper whose name is synonymous with fashion, then it's Kanye West. Throughout his whole career, he has made it clear that he takes his attire very seriously and isn't scared to go against the grain. Early in his career, he would be seen in preppy looks during his college dropout era, which was very unconventional for a hip-hop artist at the time. He clearly just doesn't give a fuck what people think and just wears what he finds cool. I mean, he literally can't stop cosplaying as a 16-year-old Japanese cartoon character. If you do minimal research, you'll find that nearly all the style eras of Ye have directly correlated with the sales of clothes. So the short answer to the question, has Ye's style influenced fashion, is yes. So let's hone in on some of the most iconic examples of his fashion influence. In the video for Stronger, Ye wore these custom-made shutter shades by French-Armenian eyewear designer Elaine Mickley, which is likely the earliest example of him truly and unequivocally influencing fashion, as these became extremely popular. Unfortunately, the reputation of these got reduced to a cheap party costume piece, as they were the easiest thing for Chinese factories to shit out and flood every tourist shop and market with around the globe. Next up is the infamous Chelsea boot plus ripped jeans combo that you can see Ye wearing at the 2016 Met Gala. He got a lot of shit at the time for disregarding the tech white tie dress code, but of course Kanye will just do whatever he wants, and to be fair, the top half of the outfit kind of had technology vibes. I mean, the contacts make him look like a TikTok filter, but yeah. The boot and trouser combo is actually a look Ye has been rocking since around 2014, and as many people can probably remember, a lot of people adopted this. I think this is an interesting trend to look back on in 2024 because incorporating formal footwear into streetwear fashion is extremely popular at the moment. Although Ye's version had a much skinnier look in both the trouser and boot silhouette, that was in vogue at the time, and he was essentially doing that era's version of what TikTok get ready with me fashion MFs are doing nowadays with chunky loafers and baggy trousers. Okay, I know earlier in the video I said owning a brand as a rapper doesn't count as influencing fashion. Well, Yeezy is the exception to this due to how impactful and widespread its influence has been. Specifically, the shoes were so culturally significant that even people who paid zero attention to fashion knew that owning a pair of Yeezy 350s back in 2015 to 2016 was a big deal. Yeezy raked in an estimated $1.3 to $1.7 billion in revenue annually to Adidas when it was at its peak. It was a commercial phenomenon that I don't think we'll see repeated for a very long time, and for better or for worse, this definitely impacted sneaker and reseller culture. Ye also created ready-to-wear runway clothing collections for Yeezy, which were known for oversized, minimalist looks with earth tone color palettes. It might be easy to overlook, but all these elements are now embedded into mainstream fashion. Without this style that Ye got lackluster reviews for from the fashion industry in the mid-2010s, then maybe nowadays we wouldn't have oversized Uniqlo Airism t-shirts being regarded as one of the most basic and entry-level ways of elevating your fashion. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but at the bare minimum, minimalist clothes, earth tones and oversized fits are all very commonplace things in modern day streetwear. As everyone probably already knows, in 2022, Ye soured his relationship with Adidas along with tanking his reputation due to anti-Semitic remarks. He has since managed to pull off a John Galliano and is back with the release of the Yeezy Pods and other clothing items, which earlier this year were all reduced to just $20 each, which caused a big reaction online with tons of people flocking to buy into this collection. To me, it seems like people are only buying these products due to the connection to Ye and the hype and novelty of everything being $20. None of these designs are good. The pods are obviously just a lazy take on Japanese G-Katabi. I'm sorry, but bro is not Margiela. Even Puma did a way more interesting take on G-Katabis back in the early 2000s. This wet vest looks like it came straight from Redbubble, but was actually designed by Moa Lola. She's actually known for having tantrums in the comments of YouTube videos that criticize her work, so fingers crossed she makes an appearance for this one. And then the cuts in these t-shirts are just weird and unflattering. It's too early to really tell, but I don't think these clothes are going to be influential style-wise, as they lack substance or innovation and will probably just be pushed aside once the hype has died down. However, I am sort of worried that the everything for $20 stunt might be emulated by other brands in the future. Ultimately, it was a marketing ploy and it worked very well. Within the genre of streetwear, marketing in a lot of cases becomes more important than the clothes themselves. Just look at the brand Cortez. Despite only releasing extremely mid and uninspired clothes, they became huge due to their really creative and innovative marketing strategies. Their 99p Cargos drop was actually very similar to the Yeezy $20 everything sale, and that also proved to be extremely successful. Ye has said for a long time that he's wanted to make all his clothes $20, but has blamed classism for the reason why he wasn't able to do this with his partnership with Gap. To me, this just seems like an attempt to twist fast fashion into something seemingly morally righteous and positive. $20 shoes and garments is not a groundbreaking thing. Fast fashion labels like Shein shit out clothes for even cheaper than this, and for people not completely void of morals or self-respect, you can buy high quality second-hand items for a similar price. I really hope other brands don't try and emulate this marketing strategy, as it's only going to result in more unethical fashion. After Ye changed the price of the Yeezy Pods to $20, people started to notice that the original ones had a Made in Italy tag, while the newer, cheaper ones had a Made in China one. There will be bad factories with poor worker environments in Italy and great ethical factories in China. It's a common misconception that certain countries have only either good or bad manufacturing. However, the fact that the change in manufacturing came right as all the prices dropped to only $20, it doesn't give me that much hope that these products are ethically made. Overall, Ye has proved himself to be an incredibly influential figure in the fashion industry, and I don't think another rapper has even come close to matching the monumental impact that he has managed to achieve. It's crazy to think that he went from being absolutely clowned on for the squad picture taken at Paris Fashion Week in 2009, look how cute Virgil looked, to being a style icon and an extremely successful designer. Alright, now that's actually all the rappers I'm going to talk about, because this video was meant to be 10 to 15 minutes long, but it didn't really work out like that. I'm sure there are other rappers I missed out which people will probably cry about in the comments. Overall, hip hop has been one of the most influential music genres for fashion that we've ever seen. That's the end of the video, goodbye.